So the next part is talking about coordination and incentives. Coordination incentives are really important. So you have to understand why. Why do firms exist? Do you ever wonder? Firms exist because it's easier to coordinate, or it's cheaper to coordinate buyers and sellers than free markets. Everyone loves free market because you don't have to fulfill like any legislation, authorities, or whatever, but it's going to be a lot difficult to coordinate. So can you imagine, to buy anything, I have to go to each individual seller and ask, what's the price, negotiate for the price, and at every transaction I have to do that. And not only do I have to negotiate for the price, I have to go and compare them with all the different sellers out there to go and discover what the price is. So it's very time consuming, it's not efficient, and firms exist because they coordinate all of these activities. So instead of going to the farmer's market or going to 5 farmers' markets to buy goods, you've got supermarkets to come in, work with the sellers, buy goods from them, have all of your fruits available. I can go to the supermarket, buy the fruit, have the price down there, done. I don't have to negotiate with every farmer and buy the goods. So it makes it a lot easier, and an organization is good when there is more coordination. So token ecosystem, how does this link to token ecosystem, right? Token ecosystems require coordination within the network. Rules have to increase coordination in the network. So because tokens are digital, they can be programmed with certain types of rules. And these programmable rules can be used to define the kind of activities the token ecosystem support or do not support. And the assets and transactions always obey the rules. And there is no exception, unlike the physical world. So these rules can be executed in programs or in smart contracts. So just a very quick understanding of the general evolution of coordination. So in the past, people lived their lives in very small, tight communities. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows each other's mother, and every mother knows the kids, and it's very small. Everyone knows everyone. So now that becomes a very informal kind of ledger of accountability, because now you've got moral impulses, social shame, gossip, or empathy that becomes the primary driver or primary incentives or punishments to behave properly, to accommodate to this community for the common good. Because if you do something wrong, then your neighbor's aunt will tell your mom, or if you do something bad in public, everyone knows who your mom is or your dad is, and they will start to tell on you. And so it becomes an informal ledger of accountability. Now, as trade begins to expand, as communities begin to expand and grow, and then we start trading with other people, it's a lot harder to communicate. It's a lot harder to coordinate. So we talked about how supermarkets, instead of going to individual farmers, supermarkets come in to buy from the sellers. So we also have supermarkets or factories mass producing. So mass producing brings down prices. It's easier and cheaper. It's more efficient than in the economy. But then it becomes, everyone consumes the good, and it becomes difficult to coordinate. If, let's say, Johnson & Johnson is doing something bad and we want to boycott their products, it's quite difficult to coordinate such activities and tell everyone that, okay, Johnson & Johnson is not good anymore. We have to stop buying from them. It's quite difficult to do that. So it's difficult to coordinate across such communities and across long distance, unless you have a callback by Johnson & Johnson saying that our tackle powder, it's not good anymore, and that's coordination only happens from the centralized authority or firm. So because now we trade long distance and trade with bigger communities, personal reputation is not as important anymore, because I don't know who you are. You can say that you're the best, you're the most trustworthy person in your village, but because we don't live in small tight communities anymore, I don't have the informal ledger of accountability. I can't trust you. I can't trust your reputation, even if you say you are who you are. So instead of this informal ledger of accountability, now governance steps in and say that, okay, we need to have formal legal contracts, we need to have regulations, and with this thing that is going to be held up by the law or whatever jurisdictions that you're in, I can trust you and I can work with you. So coordination is highly related to trust. So that's just high-level coordination. What about market-level coordination? In the past, we used to have small communities, as I mentioned, and we used to barter trade a lot. So it's more like consumer-to-consumer level barter trade. So if both of us are farmers, I produce apples, you produce celeries, and apples grow in summertime, and I get lots of apples. And you get celeries all year round, especially during winter. So we can barter, and I say that, okay, when I have during summertime, I give you apples. During wintertime, you give me celery. So you barter. Now, then we thought about, okay, it's very inefficient, as we talked about. It's very inefficient. I don't want to be going to barter with everyone, keep having the conversation again, negotiate, and then have a kind of informal contract of I'm going to give you celery and you're going to give me milk, or you're going to give me apples, or you're going to give me berries, or you're going to give services like teaching how to farm something. So big corporates step in now to coordinate, because now instead of trusting and negotiating with a lot of different strangers or a lot of different people, now big corporates come in and do that. So I don't have to be trusting all of them. I just need to trust the big corporate, and it's good. So big corporate will be stuff like Tesco, and they will coordinate and negotiate contracts with all the farmers. Then I just trust Tesco to be doing this stuff, and I buy from Tesco. So we have B2C. And then we thought about, hey, I like that, but there's still a lot of people that can add value, and I don't want to miss them out. And maybe they're too small for big corporates to notice them, or maybe they're too niche, or maybe it's just small businesses that doesn't make sense for big corporates to negotiate. So what can we do? That's where we evolve to platforms. And it's not just about trading physical products, it's also about trading information. So it could be very personal information, like information of my cousin's weekend. And I want to get the information. There is no big corporate that will want to buy this information to sell it to me, but I want to know that. So we have Facebook coming in as a platform, and we can trade information. My cousin's trading information on how to spend the weekend, and I'm trading information of where I've been during the summer holidays. So we have evolved to a platform where C2B to C. So consumers will produce content. It could be intangible information, could be intangible assets like information, or it could be very niche things like eBay or Etsy or different small little shops. There's Instagram shops now. There's like Facebook marketplaces. There are lots of even on Amazon, you have small little communities and shops. So, and consumers can also buy from them. And now big corporates come in as a platform to coordinate all of these, because it's very difficult even if they're small little shops, it's very difficult to coordinate and speak to them. So you need a platform where all the sellers are there, all the buyers are there as well, and it's easier to trade and easier to coordinate. So other examples would be stuff like Airbnb, or Airbnb has no home, but they have a lot of homes available for you to rent. So homes are owned by consumers. Airbnb is the B, which is the corporate platform, and then consumers are your different renters and guests who wants to get homes from the host. So we coordinate in very different ways now, and we have central marketplaces, which is your platform, to coordinate the movement of information and goods and services. And then it brings us to where we are today. We used to trade with people like C2C, and we can trust people. And now with platforms, we trust platforms instead. We trust a big company, or we trust Amazon or Airbnb and stuff like that. But we thought, why do we want to trust them? Why can't we trust people again? And why can't we enforce this trust through technology? Because technology allows us to do that. So, because when we trust the big corporates, the big corporates get a margin. But if we can split this margin between the two individuals, that would be pretty awesome, right? So it's where decentralization comes in. We can trade with consumers and consumers again. we can enjoy efficiency through coordination, and we don't have to rely on big corporates or platforms to coordinate for us. So we allow technology to be coordinated. But, coordination is so, okay, even if we have coordination, cooperation is so hard. How do we ensure that people will cooperate? Even if we allow all sellers and all buyers to be on a platform, it's quite easy to do that. You can just pay people, you can have freebies, you can have a lot of people on the platform. But how do you make sure they cooperate? People do not naturally cooperate. You have to understand that. People only cooperate if there is an incentive to do that, if there is something in it for them. And so this is where game theory comes in, but we'll talk more about that in future lessons. So how do we facilitate coordination? The best way is to get the truth or honest information out of people. We want people to be true or to be honest. And we'll talk about that later. But where do we see? We understand coordination now, getting people on the platform. And where does cooperation happen in token ecosystem? The first one is you have stuff like oracles in decentralized betting. So Augur is one of the decentralized Augur is a decentralized oracle and prediction market platform. So participants, anyone who is in the Augur ecosystem, can give information, can feed into the oracle, and then they can also bet on different things that happens. So cooperation is very important here because you need to trust that people are giving the right information. Otherwise, the oracle is not going to be valuable. Oracle is only valuable if it's taking in correct information and honest, true values. So this is where cooperation is hard, because if a person could bet that during 2016, and Trump won, but the oracle people can be betting that Hillary won, and you just feed oracle with the wrong information saying that Hillary won, and then in the prediction market you will actually win because you bet correctly when it's actually false in real life. So this is an extreme example of cooperation where people don't cooperate, but cooperation is very important. We also have voting or rather consensus agreements. So I know we're not voting Brexit on blockchain, but just voting in general. How do we have consensus around different issues, and how do we allow people to cooperate? Because some people have different kind of incentives, or wrong incentives, or bad incentives, where they want to maybe topple the ecosystem, or they want to make quick riches at the expense of other people. So how do we ensure that? How do we ensure that they can cooperate for the benefit of everyone? And so that's voting and decision making, and the last one is consensus. So you have different kind of consensus mechanisms. You have PBFT, you have proof of work, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, and with all of these different kind of consensus agreements, and how do you allow people to agree? How do you make sure that people can cooperate together, can work together? And based on the different types of blockchain platforms you have, could be permissioned, permissionless, or a hybrid. Then you have the different kinds of consensus agreements that is suited to your needs. So as mentioned, the way to increase cooperation is to elicit truthful preferences from participants. So we can do that in 2 steps. The first one is to make honesty the best action. How do we make sure that people being honest is the best? How do we make sure that we want so we can ensure that people is honest and being consistent with rationality and intelligent assumption, such as users will cooperate and agree to increase transaction fees because that's in line with the objective of this platform. So, for example, like MakerDAO, as I mentioned, is a stable coin, and to have it more stable, they want to agree to increase stability fee. By buying into the MakerDAO's tokens, you're also signaling that you're interested and you're supporting the cause, which is to have stability in your coin. So when it's not stable, you want to increase the stability fee to increase your stable. You want to increase your stable coins. You want to increase the stable fees stability fees to make sure your coins are stable. So that's rationality. That's being, you want to be honest with that. You can trust that people will be honest with that because it's aligned with intelligent assumptions. And so yeah, we have intelligent assumptions. And how can we also do that? We can do that by having incentive compatibility. So offer the right incentives to review the preference or types truthfully. So we call this incentive compatibility. So for example, if we have a stake to some tokens that you vote for and new stakes would be distributed to you when you win, then you have an incentive to be honest with your answers because you have skin in the game. You are staking some tokens, and if you lie, then you lose it. So just a quick reminder of what incentives are. My slides are usually, they don't have a lot of words, and this is the only wordy slides, okay? Because incentive is very important. We talked about incentives previously, that they are a very big part of economics, and I want to remind you of that again. So incentives are a central part of economics, and token ecosystems can give new ways to design and build these incentive systems. So what we talked about just now about programmable tokens and programmable assets, now it's possible to program incentives to influence the user's behaviors. So how do we do that? There are two types of incentive compatibility. The first one is DSIC and the other one is BIC. We're not going to go in depth into this, but I just want to give you a quick understanding of what incentive compatibilities are and what types there are out there. So DSIC is dominant strategy incentive compatibility, and BIC is Bayesian incentive compatibility. So what we want to do in both of these systems is to make sure that people will be honest in their preferences. People will be truthful in the information they give. With DSIC, dominant strategy, it means that the person, the tick over there, the person will be truthful no matter what people say, because being truthful is the best response that person can give, regardless of what the other ecosystem says or whatever the other participants say. BIC is Bayesian incentive compatibility, and you've got the same guy with the tick, but you realize everyone else has a tick as well. So it's only beneficial for him to be truthful if he expects everyone in the ecosystem to be truthful as well. So these are the two different models available, where at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that people are truthful. And we can either design a mechanism where they're truthful no matter what people say, or they're truthful because they expect everyone to be truthful. And if everyone expects everyone to be truthful, then the entire ecosystem will be truthful and everyone will be honest in their decisions or honest in their value and preferences. So these are quite abstract concepts. They're a lot more technical. I wouldn't go into details, but I'm introducing these terms to you. So if you're interested, I've also got a resource where you can go and find out more information about them. They're part of game theory and mechanism design. So now this is where a big fun part comes in. Talk a lot about coordination and cooperation. How is that like in the token world? And I want to introduce Moloch DAO to you. And Moloch DAO exists to help in coordination. So the aim of Moloch DAO is to coordinate resources to issue development grants in the Ethereum community. So instead of person A having a great project in Ethereum and I funding it, Moloch DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, DAO, and they pull money together and they distribute the money to allow people to develop with Ethereum grant. How does it work? First, you've got stock, and you've got capital. So if you're in Moloch DAO, you get a stock. So maybe you get 10%. And this 10% of stock equals 10%, you owning 10% of the capital. So they have, I don't know how much they have now, but I'm thinking it's a couple of million US dollars in capital. and you own 10%. When you have 10% of stock, you own 10% of that capital. Okay, very simple for now. And to access that capital, the only way to access that capital is when you burn your stock. So it's not like a dividends kind of thing. Is that I own 10% and I get 10% of the stock. To get the 10% of the stock, to get 10% of the capital, I need to burn the stock. And I will have 0 stock, and then I can cash out 10% of the capital. Okay? Then what happens to the capital? The capital will be how the resources are being distributed. So I burn my stock and I get my capital. My capital will be used to develop some Ethereum development things. So that's how resources are being distributed. Now, we coordinate with voting. And if you're in Monarch DAO, there's only one reason to vote. There's only one way to vote or one purpose of voting. Is to vote new people in. Voting new people in means voting for the stock, for people to own the stock. So if I vote someone in, if I'm in Monarch DAO and I vote someone in, then not I vote someone in, the entire organization votes the person in. Then we give the person new stock, which is maybe 1%, and this person now owns 1% of the capital. Okay? And how do you vote people in? How do people come into the Monarch DAOs, to Monarch DAO? Is by offering tribute. So this could be Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin, services, consultancy services, whatever services. As long as you offer a tribute, people agree for you to come in, then you come in. And then you'll be given a new stock, and then you own the stock. If you want to cash out to use the grant for development stuff, you can burn it and get access to the capital, and then you can do that. So this is a very interesting system because firstly, you coordinate by having just one objective, which is voting people in or out so that they can have access to the capital to help develop the Ethereum ecosystem. Another thing that's quite important as well is that it makes it very easy for anyone to want to leave. Because when we talk about coordination, we talk about people who want to be part of the ecosystem. We talk about how people are interested to be part of the ecosystem. And one of the ways to make sure that happens is that you want to make it easy for people to leave. If they say that, okay, I don't want to be part of the Monarch DAO ecosystem anymore, I can just burn my stock, get my capital, and leave. So then whoever remains are people who are interested to help promote or help grow Monarch DAO, and then it makes it easier to increase coordination that way. So that's a very interesting model or design for coordination.